The question is, are men misunderstood? That's a question that I often ask myself just based on what I see out here in society, what I see out here in social media, to the conversations. I ask myself, are they misunderstood by those closest to them? Are they misunderstood by their mothers, maybe their partners? Are they misunderstood in their marriages? Are they misunderstood in cultural norms? Are they misunderstood by society on a larger scale? And are they even misunderstood by women? And this is a conversation that I feel the need to have. However, I do think we need to have this conversation with compassion, empathy, and understanding. Men's experiences and emotions are often overlooked and even misunderstood. And what this can do for men is it can leave them feeling isolated, invalidated, to even difficulty in expressing themselves authentically. And according to some statistics that I pulled up, it indicated that over 6 million men suffer from depression per year. And I'm going to respectfully say that it could be higher. And the reason why is because men tend to underreport mental health issues, and sometimes they are less likely to seek help. Men in the United States die by suicide at a rate 4 times higher than women. And also, men are more likely than women to turn to substance abuse as a coping mechanism for mental health issues. And when we say blanket statements such as, well, men are the problem and it's all their fault, and if they could just do X, Y, and Z, then we may miss the mark in seeing that there is a misunderstanding about the current societal framework that's in place for men, right? Like, is it really designed to offer real solutions? Is it set up in a way to meet men where they are so that they can have the tools to not just survive, but mostly thrive? And what I wanted to do today is I wanted to bring someone that I met back in 2017. We actually spoke on a stage in Florida in 2017. That's how I met Jonathan up close and personal. And I had a community years ago, and he spoke on that community call. And what really intrigued me was his story. Like, the story just of his upbringing was just so, um I mean, it was sad to hear, but at the same time, seeing him overcome it was what I admired the most. And I wanted to bring him on today because Jonathan is out here in these streets, right? And when I say out in these streets, I mean he's out here helping men, he's serving men. And those are the type of people that I want on this podcast. I don't want people here with just a mic speaking on the side of their mouths. I need somebody who's out here talking to men, helping men, walking them through their challenges and to help them be better as men, fathers, and husbands. And so my guest today is Jonathan Gustave, and he is from Chicago, Illinois. And he was also raised by his grandmother in Miami, Florida. He graduated with his Bachelor's of Science in Religious Education from Oakwood University in Huntsville, Alabama. He received his master's degree in marriage and family therapy at Nova Southeastern University. He's worked with organizations such as the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, the Trayvon Martin Foundation, Broward and Dade County Public Schools, and more. His ultimate desire as a licensed marriage and family therapist is to help Black men become aware of the trauma they've experienced in their childhood so that they can have the tools to cultivate inner peace and happiness while becoming the husbands, fathers, and leaders that they were always desired to be. And so, without further ado, Jonathan, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you saying yes to my invitation.
No, thank you. That was an immaculate introduction. It was wow. That was
Oh, yeah. Gotta do the homework. I mean, that's the only way we can, have some healthy dialogue.
oh,
And, one of the things that, um, you did say in your bio, and I purposely left it out for a reason. You mentioned that you was born to a single mother in Chicago, and you overcame abandonment by your biological parents. I purposely left that out because I wanted to kinda start with your background, because I think it's so important into why you're doing the work that you're doing. you mentioned that as a kid, because I researched you. I was looking online, and I've always watched you, and I've always followed you, but you had a video, and you said as a kid, you were so callous, you were mean, you were angry, and you had to protect that little boy,
Yeah.
inside of you, and knowing that you didn't have your biological parents, you was raised by your grandmother. I mean, what was that like for you? You know, what broke you as a young at such a young age?
Man, I mean, to go several places with that, but the first place I will start is when you do not let me back up. We
Mhm.
estimate the power and the importance of having a secure attachment figure when you're a child. And a secure attachment figure, literally, that's your parents, your mother and your father. When because you're a mom, right? You've had kids, right? I believe you have two of them.
Mhm, I
Okay.
do.
So when you had your first child, they did this thing where when the child came out, you had to put the child on you, right? Skin to skin,
Right.
right? That's normally what they do when you first have a child because they want the baby to feel that motherly connection. That's the secure attachment figure. That is the emotional attachment that a child needs. So it's very important that that is the first thing that happens. Why? Because the baby coming out has to know that it is safe because now it's in a new environment.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is the foundation, or that should be the foundation of every single child that is born into this world. But it's supposed to carry on where you're supposed to feel like your parents are there to protect you. That's that secure attachment figure. Protect you physically. Of course, we already know that. That's kind of like a no-brainer to provide for you. But the thing that we don't necessarily speak about is to protect us emotionally. Now, young little girls are more prone to receive that emotional protection than boys.
Mhm.
Boys don't normally receive that emotional protection. Why? Because we're supposed to be masculine at it's really unrealistic. It doesn't make any sense, but that's what we think. We're supposed to be masculine and tough by the time we can start speaking, not realizing that the same care, compassion, warmth, and affection that a little girl receives, a boy needs that as well.
Yeah. And so just going back to you as a child, I'm assuming just not having your biological parents that resulted in a lot of maybe abandonment issues,
Oh yeah, for sure.
um,
For
all
sure.
types of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And not having my parents, and of course, as a kid, I can't understand that in real time. Is
Right.
for the years, actually, it's not until I got into like my early mid 30s that everything really started to make sense as I started to do my own work, going on my own healing journey. And the impact that that abandonment had on me, it made me act out. It made me eventually I ended up dropping out of high school. I got into a lot of fights. I could never be in a situation where I was just doing right or just being a normal kid. And the reason for that is because I was literally trying to survive.
Yeah.
I was like an animal in the jungle just trying to survive the prey. So I had to shift and I have to shape and morph into something or someone that I probably wouldn't have been if I had safety and security from parents.
So you reached your 30s when you realized it was time to detach from those surviving mechanisms. Because at this point, that was your normalcy to protect yourself at all costs.
Yeah.
But then it got to a point where this no longer works for the next chapter of my life. I don't know if you were married at that time,
I was.
because I know okay, you are did you already have children?
I did.
Okay.
I
And,
did.
what gave you that moment where it's like, "Okay, it's time to shift?" What gave you that awakening?
Well, when I had mainly my kids. I
Yeah.
remember one time I was coming from the office. There was one night, and I was just like, you coming from work, you're tired.
Right.
And I walk into the house, and then my son was probably about 3 years old at the time. And when I walk in, he just stands there and he looks at me. And then my wife is like, "Hey, Jojo, what's out of your dad?" And I'm like, because I'm a therapist, there's certain information that I have that a normal person doesn't have. I don't believe in making kids say hi because that's a sign of like kind of you're forcing them to do something that they're not comfortable doing. They have to warm up to that. So for me, I'm like, man, I'm his dad, and he didn't want to come say hi to me, and he looked like he was afraid, he was scared. And I don't beat my kids. I don't do anything of any of that. So I'm wondering, like, why doesn't he want to come say hi to me? I'm curious about that. And then my wife and I end up having a conversation about it that same night. And she's like, man, you got to understand, like, when you come home, your energy is just so like you just don't want to be around you. It's just like you're so down. You seem so angry. You seem so bogged down. You seem so burdened. You don't seem like you're happy to be here. And I'm like, okay, that I had to sit on that, and I had to like really think about, okay, what is causing that? And for me, I understand that as a therapist, majority of the time, I would go on to say 99.9% of the time, whatever we're doing in the present, it is a manifestation of what happened in the past.
Mm.
Because I grew up having always to have my guard up. I remember going to middle school, fixing my face to have a mean mug just so no one wouldn't bother me. I
Mm.
practiced that type of energy. And now that I practice that type of energy to protect myself in those type of environment, that energy is still with me. So now when I'm tired, when I'm frustrated, when I'm going through challenges, when I'm annoyed, that defense mechanism, it comes right up. So then I was like, oh man, this is what he's feeling when I come into his presence. And that really hurt me. But in the same breath, I had compassion for myself because I understand like, hey, this is who I had to be in order to survive those environments. Now I just have to do the work to just recalibrate. And I'm still doing that work. It's not like it's
Mhm.
over. Like I'm
Right.
still doing it. I'm still actively doing it because this is the way I had to be for 20 plus years.
Mm. Right. So it's just, again, we're creatures of habit. So it's easy to revert back to what we know and what's familiar. But I love that you made that shift for yourself and your family. One of the things that you talk about a lot online, and you also have a podcast as well, is you bring up a lot of topics about men, healthy conversations, which is really good to have. And I know when we spoke last week, we talked about the misunderstandings of men. And by being a therapist, what do you and in your work with men, what are some of the common challenges you kind of see maybe across the board that you hear from men where they often feel misunderstood by those who are close to them?
That's a great question. I would say, if I say one main thing that they do not that what they're doing and how they're acting in the moment is something that they actually want to do. So what I mean by that is, I see a lot of married men, and one of the main things that they say normally when they come in is that, yeah, my wife says I need to go to therapy because I have a problem expressing myself. I shut down all the time every time it's time to have, conflict or conflictual conversations. And it's not that they just want to shut down. They're not just checking out because they want to. They're checking out because they've never been given an opportunity to learn and to develop the skill, not only to learn and develop the skill, but to be given the permission to
Mm,
express how you are feeling outside of it being anger. Because most of the time, when it comes to feelings of sadness, that is not acceptable if you're a man. But when you're angry, that's more acceptable in society. Anger is more acceptable for a man. But when you're sad, when you're disappointed, when you're let down, when you are hurt, when you've been ridiculed, you just have to tuck that in and keep it moving. So now you go throughout your entire life like that. Now you enter into a relationship where you have to express yourself
Right.
in a healthy way, but you only know two ways. Is either you just blow up and get upset, or you just go in a shell, you shut down, you don't say anything. But that's all because we've never been given the permission, nor have we been given the tools, the emotional tools to know how to deal with ourselves or whatever we're feeling to articulate it emotionally.
Mm. Yeah. So, wow. I mean, yeah, that's good. I think that's true. We're now being taught, or we're being told to do something that we've never just been trained to do, and that's to be fully expressive.
Yeah.
Anger is a common emotion that people can gravitate to well. Anything outside of that is like, "Well, you don't supposed to have that. You don't supposed to feel that way." Um, do you think men feel heard in this current climate? In terms of just their struggles, their challenges, like, I know that there is a lot of information to help women,
Mhm,
right? I mean, you even got a lot of men talking to women.
mhm.
You understand what I'm saying? And so, I feel like in a lot of this, there could be where a man feels muted, feels like he's not heard. There's really no safe space for him,
Mhm.
even in the home.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Um,
for
even
sure.
I would even be safe to say, even in wanting a man to be expressive, the question is, can we honestly, like, because I think we have to also maybe check our philosophy on what we think a man is, because if a man
Who
is
who's our? I just gotta be clear. Who's
women, women.
okay?
No, I'm talking about, he like, no, I just want to make sure you
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I'm a face for that. Yeah.
no, and I'm saying that because I had to do this, in full transparency. I had to do this for a lot of reasons. My father, I would say, I'm not gonna say he wasn't emotional. I don't think people are non-emotional. I don't think that's a good way to express men. I just think he displayed certain emotions or certain mannerisms. And one of those things were, it wasn't a lot of vulnerability there. If he did it, it may have been in private. So I think I know I may have developed a certain way a man should be and behave. And so I wonder if, we, and when I say we as women, let me be clear, have to, maybe debunk, um, what our narratives are around men and emotions. And you just look like you ready. Like, let me
Yeah,
let me just say this.
I'm ready. Yeah, yeah. Tag me in. I'm ready for you to tag me in. No, this is term, and I know you've heard it because it's circulated a lot the last couple of years called toxic masculinity. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's a word.
yeah. So normally when you hear toxic masculinity, the first thing that comes to the mind is that it's a man. But what people don't understand is that women also have toxic masculinity traits as well. And
Mm,
what you're saying right now, that's exactly what it is. Like I've heard I can't even count on my hand how many men I've seen that have tried to express and display vulnerability with the woman that they're with. And they're like, hey, what are you doing? No, you're not supposed to be acting like that. Like you're not supposed to be showing these type of feelings or what, like you gotta man up. Like you gotta, that's toxic, right? So now this reinforces the idea that a man does not or should not display emotions of hurt. So it's not a man nor a woman thing, it's a societal thing. And most men don't feel heard because they're not even putting themselves in a position to be heard. Hence why you see the suicide rate, the depression rate amongst men is so much higher because no human being is supposed to be left to just have all of these thoughts, all of these feelings, all of these things swirling on inside of them and ruminating on these things all the time. We are meant as you know, we're created for community. We're created to help one another. So if I can't express to the person that is right next to me, whether it is a partner, whether it is a parent, whether it is a friend, a sibling, if I can't tell you what's really going on inside of me, if I can't tell you that, man, something's happening in school with some kids and I don't know how to deal with it, I'm being bullied, they're bothering me. If I can't tell you, man, work is just too hard and I don't know if I can be able to go through it, if I can't be able to express those things to you, then I'm literally just dying from the inside out. And what ends up happening is I start to develop as a man different coping mechanisms. That's what a substance abuse comes into the picture.
Yeah. Mm. Let's talk about the healing work for men.
Mhm.
Most of your clients are men, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And because you directly work with them and just kind of based on the work you've been doing, and I just kind because I want to clear the air on this. Are men doing their work?
I mean, from what I see,
Right.
roster, I definitely see men doing their work for sure. And there's a misconception that not only that men are not doing their work, but they don't want to do their work. We live in a day and age where we have information at the palm of our hands,
Yeah.
lightning speed. So they're reading, they're watching, they're listening to podcasts, they're more in tune with their feeling. And there's a study that proves this where now I believe men are about 3 to 4 times more involved in the emotional upbringing of their kids than men were in the 1950s. So that shows you
Yeah.
men are really looking to be connected not only to those around them, like their family and friends, and be open emotionally, but they really want to be connected to themselves. And a lot of them understand that, man, I need help in this area.
Mm. I know one of the things you mentioned about was how people typically or, show up in their present, um, really is a direct influence of their past. And, I kinda wanna talk about trauma 'cause I know that's a word that gets talked about a lot too. And trauma is real, but I think we may have one way of how we see trauma, maybe from a very extreme
Mm,
perspective, not realizing that trauma is anything that can disrupt your psychological well-being.
yeah.
What are some of the things that you may see show up maybe repeatedly, maybe from different men who probably don't know each other, but they all share some of the same commonalities in, maybe in their childhood?
One thing that I noticed
Mhm.
when it comes to men specifically who have been neglected and or abandoned, there are certain symptoms, like common symptoms that I always see show up every like without fail. There is one, a detachment from their emotion. And that detachment from the emotions, it it kind of grows into them not knowing how to communicate effectively. And then there is the aspect of being ultra logical, just trying to make sense of everything. Because the thing is, when you go through certain traumas, and there's different type of traumas, there's the acute trauma where it's something like very minor, very small, a one-time thing. But then there can be the long-standing trauma that continually happens over and over again, like neglect and abandonment. And I noticed that a lot of men really do this thing where they try to make sense of what's happening, of what's going on. And that also goes hand in hand with detaching from the emotion. And that in itself helps them to continue to survive and continue to do the things that they're doing. So that's why a man could be excellent at working because he knows how to compartmentalize, but he could be a terrible father or husband because that requires an immense amount of emotional intelligence. But
Mm,
the trauma that you experience won't allow you to. There's a detachment. It won't allow you. It's like you just don't know how to do that. And then it could be this obsession with sex, with pornography. There could be a great obsession with that. Why? Because we may think that we're detached emotionally, but that emotion has to come out in some shape, way, or form, and it comes in the way of sex, pornography, so on and so forth. So those are the common things that I normally see when men are or have experienced trauma from childhood.
okay. And so when you talk about neglect and abandonment, because I kind of want to be clear, sometimes it's not about them parents not being in the home. It's parents in the home, and you can still experience neglect and abandonment. I want to kind of, I know we always talk about men and fathers, but what about their relationships with their mothers?
Mhm.
Um, I want because I feel like that's a conversation that we don't talk about a lot is the mother and son relationship, or even the mother and daughter relationship. But
Mhm.
today I really want to see, like, does that have a direct influence as well in terms of emotional connection? Because again, going back to being a woman who was taught man up,
Mhm.
and if a woman is raising a boy, and especially if she's a single mother, that can be, kind of instilled in her to put that on her child.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I will say this. I've seen, well, you talking about from a single mother's perspective, I've seen men that have come to me that have a dysfunctional relationship with their mother, but in the eyes of society, the regular or the untrained eye wouldn't see it as dysfunctional. And there's a term for it. It's called enmeshment, where it's like the mom and the son are like this. Like there is pretty much the son has no individuality. He has no personality outside of his mother because what she did, because she was a single mom and trying to make ends meet and trying to do her best to provide, she used the son as an emotional crutch and he became a pseudo husband. So now when the son tries to start dating, she gives that girl hell. And that happens a lot in the Caribbean, in the Caribbean culture. It happens a lot. That mother gives that woman hell. Why? Because she's like, it's like a covert message like, hey, we got something good here. Don't be trying to come here and trying to get in between me and my son. You don't have no rights here. So on the outside looking in, like, man, that mother son relationship, man, he's always doing everything for his mom. He's always there and so on and so forth. Gotta be careful. That is called enmeshment. It's not healthy at all. And it manifests itself, like I said, when the son tries to have his life outside of the mother.
Mm, that's a whole different topic with that.
Like that. Like,
It
so
is. It really is. It really is. When it comes to heartbreak, divorces, breakups, and working with men, I think sometimes maybe, again, from a cultural perspective, men aren't phased by it. They're not hurt by it. As a matter of fact, they're actually less likely to file. Women do tend to file more. Um, how do these misconceptions about they're not being phased by it, it doesn't bother them. How does it impact their emotional well-being and their willingness to seek support? Because if I can be honest, although I work directly with women, I do talk to men, whether that's in the DM, whether that's up close and personal, coached a few of them privately. It's really hard for them, more than probably what most people think. Um, your face says it all. And if y'all watching this on YouTube, his face just said it all. Um, what are some of the challenges they come in when having to experience a divorce or even a breakup from a relationship that they really cared about?
this is a ooh, that's there's layers to that
Mhm.
and um I would say that it all goes back to what men have the permission to show society. We don't have the permission to show that we are hurt. So a lot of us will act as if it doesn't phase us and we're just going on in life and kind of just sabotaging other areas in our lives because we're not dealing with that hurt that we
Right.
experience, right? Because
Mhm.
we don't again, we don't have the permission to express. And sometimes we don't even have the words to express. And a lot of times also we don't even know that we're hurt. That's the crazy thing to me. Like I will have men come to me who are going through a divorce and they're like, I'm here only because I was told I'm supposed to come here because I'm going through a divorce, but I don't even know why I'm here. So I have to literally walk them through the process, the emotional process of what they're feeling so they can realize that they're hurt. And then when they get to the point where they realize that they're hurt, hopefully by that time, I've created a safe place for them to actually admit it. Because if they don't
Right.
admit it, there's going to just be more chaos, more destruction that's going to ensue. So it's always going to go back to what the permission that we have to express how we feel. And let me tell you that men out here are hurting. I tell you, I have countless amount of stories of men going through divorce. A lot of times, and that's the thing. A lot of times we look at relationships and we say, oh, if the man and the woman are no longer together, we just automatically assume that, oh, it's the man's fault. And then we assume, oh, he may have cheated. And the woman is pretty much held on a pedestal as if she has no fault.
Right.
But even in situations where a man has stepped out on his wife, has stepped out on his partner, a lot of times I find it that it never started there. There was an emotional infraction that happened in the relationship where he doesn't feel safe with that woman, but he doesn't know how to communicate that he doesn't feel safe. There are certain things that are transpiring in the relationship that he wants to be able to express, but he doesn't have the emotional tools to express. Then the woman is, a lot of the times, she is piling on him, what we call it nagging, right? Like she is just piling on him. He doesn't know how to deal with that. And there's a clinical term for that. It's called flooding, where a man actually feels flooded, where any type of situation where a woman is like saying, hey, like, I need you to do better. I need you to do this and that. He literally is like, tests have been done where the blood pressure starts to rise and the man just feels stuck. He feels flooded. And what happens is because he doesn't know how to express it, he bottles everything up and he brews with anger and frustration. And I've heard so many men tell me that in order to release that, they step out. So, and when I say step out, they cheat. And then that becomes a cycle. But it doesn't start there. Where it really starts is that we don't know how to express. We haven't been given the permission, nor have we been trained to express like, hey, I need time. Like you're going too far. Like, I understand I need to do this work. I understand I need help, but you have to give me space. Like, we don't know how to have those dialogues when the conversation is so emotionally charged.
Yeah, because I know you mentioned on one of your posts on your feed, you said women shouldn't force their man to go to therapy. And so I guess it's one of those things where what is the other option to do? And I say this because, of course, I was once married and I found that I was really trying to force someone to do something. And of course, after my divorce, after I started doing my work, one of the things I really had to learn was I cannot control somebody else and what they do. When I tell you that is like the hardest thing to logically get, like, but then
Mhm.
at the same time, you think you're an exception to the rule. It was like, no, Tanya, you're really not. But I'm saying that because I think for me, when I looked at it at the time, I didn't think I was forcing it. I thought I was being encouraging.
Yeah.
I thought I
Yeah.
was trying to
Yeah.
be, I didn't look at it like forcing. I'm not
Yeah.
forcing. I just know that he
Yeah.
can be better and he
Yep.
could do that.
Mhm.
And so it justified,
Yeah.
but the underlying truth
Yeah.
was that I was still trying to force it. And admitting that was tough
Mm.
because I was trying to control the situation and
Mm.
I didn't want to accept that that's what I was doing. And so with that being said, what is the alternative? And I say that because we hear, well, heal the boy in him and you should heal him. And
Oh, no.
I have my views on things like that. And I'm saying to myself, what is the alternative?
Mhm. So,
Um,
what you said it. I don't know if you were doing it before you got the divorce or was it after, but I think, the point is valid. Like, you see that your man has a lot of potential. You see that he needs help. Why? Because you are his mirror. So you see things in him that he cannot see in himself. And you may even have the answer of what he needs to do to help himself. However, like you said, you can't push, you can't force, you can't control. Why? Because you're just going to make the situation a whole lot worse. So what you need to do is you need to take yourself to therapy and not just go to complain about what's not going well. Like,
Mhm.
that's fine. You could talk about that stuff. That's okay. But you need to make sure that your primary objective is to know how to support that person that you're with without trying to force them to do something that you think that they need to do. And the best way that you can support is by you becoming a better version of yourself. Because when someone is struggling, when a man is struggling internally, he doesn't want to show it most of the time. And again, a lot of times he doesn't even know that he's struggling internally.
Right.
So you have to be able to develop an immense amount of immense amount of compassion and patience to see him literally, not from the man that you were with, but see him from the boy that was hurt.
Mm.
See him from the boy that was hurt, then it changes how you interact with him. And then that in itself, it raises the compassion meter because now you're like, oh, wow, he's not doing these things because he's intentionally just wants to do them. He's doing them because this is how he protected himself. These are the beliefs that he developed as a man to help him get to this point. Why did that happen? How did he develop those beliefs? Well, because his dad wasn't this, or his mom wasn't that, or his siblings. Like, just understanding the framework of him and how he grew up as a person, that's really going to help you. And you need a third party to help you with that. You need an outside source to
Yeah.
help have that perspective.
Yeah.
And to be honest, that's the best thing that you can do. I know a lot of women don't like that answer because it's like, it's not directly solving the problem. But you don't
Yeah.
realize when you take that posture and you take that stance, you are literally creating a space for him to eventually, and we don't know when, eventually come out. And then you learn how to have certain conversations with him to help him feel safe. And then you be like, man, I don't know, you're going through all these things. I think maybe you should look to speak to someone that can help you. We just leave it there. You leave it there. Just drop that seat.
Yeah. And, and I know the one of the responses is, well, what if they don't want to do it? What if it's to the point where it's just really causing a lot of damage in our marriage and our relationship? Should I, even though I'm doing the work on myself, should I stay? Should I dissolve? I know one of the things for me is that if it is abusive, I do recommend a safe space just because of what abuse does to people. I don't really necessarily agree with people staying in abusive situations, but I would love to know from you. And I think at the end of the day, it boils down to people deciding what they want to do for themselves. But just as a therapist, just helping people navigate that
Yeah.
decision. You
Okay.
understand what I'm saying?
Great. Great question. Great question. And I wanna just, piggyback off what you said. If it's an abusive situation, just get out of there. Like, there's no that what I just said does not apply for that. That's all
Right.
right. I want to get that clear. That doesn't apply for that. So we took the first step. You've done your work. You're doing your work. You're leaning into compassion and understanding and seeing him as the boy he was and not the man that he is. You're doing all of that, yet the needle is not moving. Now, the next step, you need to create a hard boundary. And that hard boundary is what I like to call a strategic separation, where you're separating to see if the relationship can become something. See if it's actually something that he wants. Because you want it, but does he want it? And the way he's gonna show that he wants it is by eventually doing the work, right? So I've done this with several couples or several, individuals that have come to me. For the very few women that I see, I've done this, and a couple of men too that have done this as well. Where it actually works. Where you say, look, I don't see how we're gonna move forward in a healthy way. There's just a lot of dysfunction. You have a lot of things that you're dealing with. I've been doing my best to support you, but if you're not doing your part in this relationship in order for us to move forward in a healthy way, then I don't see how we can coexist because there's damage being done. And then you have to say, look, I think in order for us to move forward in this relationship, we have to separate. And as we separate, if you want this to move forward, then we got to go to couples counseling. And then you have to do your individual work as well.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, it really is a shared responsibility.
Absolutely.
It's really difficult to have a thriving relationship if both parties are not committed in doing their work individually and then coming together collectively. And I agree. I'm totally with you on that. You said something else that I wanted to talk about, and that was men and money and how and this was exactly what you quoted. You was like, men need to stop using their financial success as the end all be all to a successful life. And when it comes to a man's sense of masculinity, culture seems to really equate their worth and value solely on their income. And here's the thing, I'm not here to say money doesn't matter, Jonathan. I think it's crazy to say money doesn't matter because money's a tool. It helps us with our quality of life, right? However, I feel like other aspects of life gets overlooked because money is the only thing that we look at. And so what other aspects of life should men really focus on to find fulfillment and redefine their sense of worth outside of money?
Mm.
And Imma tell you why this was so important for me to ask. I had a friend of mine, he was married for 14 years, and he went through a divorce, and he literally told me, he said, "I wonder if I could ever meet someone who loves me just for who I am and not what I have." Literally, that was a question he asked me. I'm not kidding you. And I was just like, I never had a man literally ask me something like that before. It's heavy, right? And so I can only imagine how many men feel that way, but won't say it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I would like to know from you, like, what other things men should really focus on to say, okay, you know what? My worth is not tied on my financial success. Like, I can't allow that to be my only source because I think it misses out on them being emotionally available to other people, themselves. Because most men lead with, I pay all the bills. I buy this. I do this. Yeah.
I think, it's kind of like, honestly, there's only really one thing.
Okay.
I think men need to really look at the quality of their relationships. I think that's, at the end of the day, that's always going to be the most important thing, more than money, more than anything else. It's going to be the quality of your relationships. And a lot of us, we don't nurture our relationships. And it's because, Mhm. from the time that we were kids, we enter into relationships with a mask. We're masking.
Yeah.
Like, we act like nothing phases us. A friend makes a joke about us. We act like it didn't hurt us. Or, you know, we're always entering into situation masking. And as a result, we don't have high quality relationships. But we think in order to have high quality relationships, we need to have money. We need to look like something that's important. But then just like that man that you spoke about, over time, you start to see that you start to question, do people love me for me? Or do they love me for what I can do, what I can provide, what I have? And you have to, and I'm seeing this in older men. Now, when I start to see men like on 50s or 60s, it's just so interesting how the perspective begins to shift. And I think it shifts because you start to get older and you start to look at past decisions that you've made. And you start to see that those past decisions have really become a wrecking ball in all the important relationships in your life. Spouse, ex-spouse. You see how your kids, they're not dealing with you like that. They don't really want to be around. They don't call you. The quality of your relationships are not good at all. So now that you get to a certain age, you start to realize like, man, like, wow, I'm alone.
Yeah.
So I think we need to, as men, we need to start really shifting our mindset. Like the two can stand together. You can make good money and have quality relationships.
You can
Like,
do both.
y-
It's
y-
not either
yeah,
or.
yeah, you can do both. But we get on this hyper masculine drive of conquering and overcoming, and we try to do that with money and career and all these different things. And again, we're not compartmentalizing, so we push the relationships that we need to nurture to the side. The relationships really that's going to be there, that are supposed to be there in our old age. So I really what I try to do with my younger men who are struggling as fathers or as partners, I try to fast forward them, like fast track them, like, you know, it's something that I do, like I make them write a eulogy. Like, what would you want people to say at your eulogy? Now, are you doing things right now in your life right now for that eulogy to actually become a reality? So I try to fast track them to see, like, hey, look, I know you're making your money. That's good, but understand that the quality of your relationships, that is the most important thing. That matters big time because when you get in your old age, m- money doesn't comfort you. It doesn't speak to you.
Yeah, and it kinda goes into this next question because you mentioned the quality of their relationship. So, I'm assuming in same relationships, we're talking something beyond just romantically,
Yeah.
right? And so let's talk about that healthy brotherhood. I don't know if it's lacking or they have more surface, but let's just say when men congregate, it can be maybe about sports, money, business, women, cars, sex, gaming. But outside of those things, do men feel safe in those relationships that they have to talk about something deeper, like feelings, emotions, and challenges without being judged? You understand what I'm saying? Like,
I
I'm
think
not
it's
saying they have bad relationships. I'm just saying, are they
comfortable.
of huh?
Are they comfortable like talking about those things amongst other men?
Mhm. Yeah.
No, we're not.
Mhm.
That's
That
way to
was easy.
Yeah, no, we're not. And again, it's because we see here's what I try to explain to certain men. It's like we think that we've left the relationships or those relational dynamics with other men or let's say boys back in the past. However, you develop the relationships when you were a boy with other boys, it just manifests itself in a different way when you're a man, but it's still there. Like there's a wall that's there. So for me personally, I there's not a man that I know that that feels like he has to put that wall up with me. Because I take the initiative and I just share my own stuff like, "Hey, yeah, I'm struggling, like, I'm hurt that hurt me." Like, that's a weird thing for a man to say, "I'm 6'8". 320. So that's it's like, damn. So that's kind of, that's a big. It's like this guy saying that, but I'm okay with that because what I realize is that somebody has to do it. But the moment one person does it, it's like the room exhales
Yeah.
amongst the men, and then people begin to share, or it's like somebody will text me like, "Yo, man, when you said that, this and that, I thought of this and that, so on and so forth. I really appreciate it." Yeah, but I'm seeing more and more of that happening. I'm seeing more and more men being more transparent among their guy friends because we talked about depression amongst men and how high the rates are.
Mm,
And
yeah.
one thing that is very important, and every therapist should be trying to do this, is that you're trying to connect your client with their social support. And the best social support that someone can have, you will say, is their family. But with that is to have another man that looks like you, that goes through what you go through to help you through your time. Like last year, 2023, I went through a serious depression. I've never experienced depression before. I did not know what that felt like. It was terrible. My thoughts were very dark and I just couldn't stop them. Yeah, my wife was there and she helped me through it. But what really got me through was when I was able to have my core group of friends, like 3 or 4 of them that I can just express it on anything. And just having the feeling of them, like, around the clock, they're checking up on me like, "Yo, you good? Everything's okay? Like, you need anything?" Like, and one is here up in Orlando, the others are in Miami, like, "Hey, you need us to send you Uber Eats? Like, you need what do you need? Like, yo, you good?" Like, that's everything. And we, as men, we think we don't need that, but we need that from other men. It's very important. But the reason why a lot of us don't feel as if we need it from other men, that type of social support, is because we didn't receive it from our fathers, whether the father was there physically or not. But we need
Yeah.
it.
Wow. No, that's good. I love that. And just you saying you went into a state of depression yourself. How long were you in that state?
Man, yo, I was in that state of depression for about 5, 6 months.
Wow.
I to the point where, well, first and foremost, I was in a state of depression and I experienced burnout. So those 2 things at the same time, it was, man, my life was upside. I was in the space mentally, emotionally. I thought I was gonna be like that forever. I had no drive, no ambition. I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't work for 2 months. And all I did literally was just wake up every day. Well, twice a week, I was going to therapy, just trying to unpack and resolve certain things that transpired in the past that were affecting me in the present, and I didn't even realize it.
Mm, yeah. Did you ever mend your relationship with your parents?
Well, with my father, I never met my father a day in my life. I
Mhm.
never met him, but then when I actually met my siblings, well, when they found me, by that time I was about, I was like 31 years old. So that was like 7, 8 years ago. I was 31 years old. They found me. By that time, he had passed away a while ago, like 10 years before. So I never met him. At that time at 31, that was the very first time I ever saw even a photo of him.
Wow.
I was in the, yeah, I didn't, so that wasn't happening. When my mother, I never mended fences with my mother. I
Mm,
really fully did. And I remember when I was about 23 years old, I went on this mission trip. Like I took a sabbatical off and I was just traveling the country, going to juvenile detention centers and schools, and churches, raising money to go overseas and speaking to youth around the country, so on and so forth. So I had this major epiphany. It was like, and right after that time, I ended up getting married too in that same year. So I had this major epiphany. I was like, you know what? I'm entering into this new season of my life. I think it's time for me to have a relationship with my mother.
Mm.
So when I tried to have a relationship with her, I got very discouraged. And let me not say discouraged. I was hurt. I was really hurt and I was sad because when I tried to have the relationship where she was just asking me for money, she was just asking me for money and for things. And I'm still young, 24 years old,
Yeah.
20, 25 years old. So in my mind, I'm like, yo, you don't see, I'm trying to build a relationship with you. Like, you are not in my life. You weren't there for me at all. And I'm making the effort. You just asking me for money. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. And I just cut her off and I just stopped
Wow.
because I was hurt. And then maybe about 10, 12 years later after that, she ended up passing away. So
Yeah.
I did have contact with her, when my first child was born. She sent, my daughter clothes, and I have one of my sisters out of the 3 sisters that I have, one of them that I'm really close to, she would kinda fill in the gap and, communicate between the both of us, and she would just express to me like, "Yeah, our mother, she went through this and that." I was like, "Yeah, I know what she went through," but I didn't care because I was like, "I tried." You
Yeah.
know, I really tried, but again, I was young, so I didn't understand. No, understand. I didn't have the compassion towards her. I was just thinking very linearly. I was like, well, I'm making an effort. She's gonna see, and then we're gonna mend fences. But I
Yeah.
didn't realize that it wasn't gonna work
It
like
was
that.
gonna be. Yeah.
It take a lot more time than that.
How did you make peace with that? Or the question is, did you make peace with that? And
Yeah,
I say that just because, um, our parents are, the first relationship that we have, and it impacts so much of our journey of life. And because you say you made peace with that, um, how are you able to? What do you do? Because I know you say you still do the work. Is this something that you still just make sure that you're practicing a level of self-awareness where that doesn't impact or cause a severe impact on maybe how you show up as a husband or a father,
yeah,
um, because of the relationship that you had with your parents?
yeah. I will be a liar if I said that it doesn't have an impact on my
Right.
relationship with my kid. Does it have a
Okay.
severe impact? No, because of the awareness and the work that I'm doing.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, those feelings, those emotions, those experiences, that's gonna be a part of me to the day that I
Right.
right. And it's great that my wife and I can have these my wife understands that she knows me so well. So we can have these conversations. And if something is happening was like, hey, you were kind of a little bit too, and I was like, oh yeah. We it's like we just keep moving forward, right? Because like I said, like those things are a part of me. They're a part of me for the rest of my life because those are the things I experienced in my primary years, but they're not overtaken. But what I do realize is that my wife and I, we've been next month, makes it 14 years.
Oh, congratulations.
Y- From the time we started to now, I'm a totally, totally different person. The way I treat her, the way I treat my kids. Like when we first got together, I had to be very callous, and there was no exception for that. I was a very nice person, a very giving person, a very generous person with my money and my time. But when it comes to showing that I love you, like affection, I was not good at that. But over time, as I'm doing the work, over the years, I've become a whole lot better with that. Uh, so yeah, it's still a part of me, and yeah, it shows up sometime. But if I look at the timeline and I look who I was back in like 2007 when we first met to now 2024, oh, I'm proud of myself.
Right, and that's how you have to look at it, and I'm glad that you were honest enough because I think people think, you know, all triggers will fade, and that's just not realistic.
Oh, not at all.
Um, and the relationship you had with your parents, I don't think it's something you get over. Like you said, you made peace with it,
Yeah.
which are not the same. And so I'm glad that you were able to humbly admit that, because I think what people have to understand is that this is really a journey. Like you had to practice learning how to give affection.
Mhm.
For real, acts of service was easy for you,
Yeah.
probably. It was
Yeah.
the affection that was the thing that you had to strengthen.
You
And
know
so,
what?
mm,
I want to I want to take it a step further because you said acts of service was easier for me, and let me tell you why. The acts of service was an extension of how I dealt with my trauma, how
mm,
I dealt with my neglect and my abandonment, because I wished someone was there to show up for me
yeah,
and be there for me. So it's like I subconsciously developed that characteristic of always showing up for other people. So it's like everything is intertwined. And that's why I would always, I have this activity that I do with my clients where I would buy clay, different colors, red, blue, orange, purple. And then I will tell them, all right, put it all together. Right. And then they mix it all together. And then
mhm,
clay all those colors together, what ends up happening, it becomes discolored. It becomes this like this brownish, this weird type of color. You just see the pieces of the red, the blue, all mixed in. But it's no longer. But when that happens, if you try to separate, you can't separate it. It's like the blue is going to be mixed in with the orange is going to be mixed in with the purple, and that's us as human beings. Like the thing that hurt us gave us certain characteristics and traits and personalities that helped us along the way. But in the same breath, there's another side to that where there's limitation in those characteristics. And I always see people say, yeah, I just want to change. I don't want to be this person anymore. I said, but understand, if you change this, you're going to give up what makes you great too. So what you need to be able to do is learn how to manage it, not get rid of it, manage it.
what is something you wish women knew and truly understood about men that you think they have all wrong, that, what is what do you feel like, what, I really wish women would just maybe step outside of themselves and maybe their perspective and their view and just really see men for this. What is something you wish they knew?
Hmm. Um, the thing that comes to mind is I wish women knew that men don't always want to be tough.
Yeah.
We even don't let the appearance fool you. Even the way that we look, we may seem as if, we have it all together and, we can handle anything and everything's all good and nothing phases us. Nah. You don't have to communicate that to us. Like, I know you don't really want to be tough. You don't have to communicate that. But the way that that the woman would deal with us, that's what's really important. We don't, we, many of us don't want to be tough. A lot of men wish they had a safe place. And you mentioned it earlier, you said that some men don't even feel safe in their own homes. And that is 1,000,000% accurate.
Mhm.
And it's because we feel as if the same way we show up at work, we got to be tough, act like nothing phases us. We got to show up at home like that as well. And that's exhausting. A lot of us really just want a place where we can just be.
And yeah, I love that. Oh, that's good. That's good. I know we have to wrap up. I want to ask this question too. What advice would you give to a man who's in a season where they have friends, but there may be surface level conversations where they don't feel comfortable expressing themselves. They may be in a dark space, flooded with thoughts that they just don't know what to do with, emotions that they don't know what to call them. Could be going through a divorce, could be on the verge of their relationship ending, just really in a dark space, maybe not as present as they would like to be as fathers. May feel like financially they're just not where they want to be and really feel um disconnected from the world. What advice would you give to that man who struggles with getting that help and support that they need. Because even though they're going through all of that, they still shy away from getting the help.
Yeah, that's a common thing amongst most men.
Yeah.
Advice I would give them is if you're not journaling, that's what you need to start doing. I think that's always the first step. Start writing out what you feel and what you think. And it's called brain dumping, just getting all of it out.
Yeah.
That's always going to be the first step if you feel as if you you don't have the courage yet to speak to someone about it. That will definitely go a long way. Just having a routine of just writing out your thoughts and your feelings. And I would even go as far as like audio journal, because that's what I do too. Outside of writing, I do audio journal. I'll go on a walk and early in the morning, and I'll just talk about how I'm feeling and what I'm thinking and what I've experienced and all the epiphanies that I've had and what has frustrated me, because that helps me organize my thoughts and my feelings in a way where I don't do anything destructive or stupid.
I like the audio journaling. I think that's a very um good technique. How about what about we always I always think therapy is a great tool
Mm.
for people. How can they go about even just entertaining the thought of getting it, you
Yeah.
know?
I think honestly, good content like this, when you hear another man speak about these things, that always opens the door.
Mhm.
Content. What are you listening to? And that's very important. If you know you need help, because there's something called there's stages when it comes to therapy. There's that pre-contemplation stage where at first it's like you just don't no, you're not doing it. Then there's the
Yeah.
contemplative stage, like it's like kind of like maybe, but nah. But then there's the contemplative stage where you're like, okay, I really think that this is something I need to do. And then you actually take the steps to do it. Now that that could take, I don't know. For everyone it's different. So it could take a year, it could take 3, 4 years in those stages. I don't know. But what helps speed the process along is when you're hearing certain content that lends towards what you're experiencing and getting the solutions from that content. Or they don't even have to be solutions, because I know as men we love solutions, but the content makes you feel better about yourself. That's that's one of the big ways. And oh, for my women out there, you want your man to go to therapy, so on and so forth. Content. I do that all the time. Like, hey, just hey, share my IG with them. Let them hear what I'm saying. And don't try to say, you see what he's saying? This and here. But like, what do you think about that? Like, what are your thoughts
Yeah.
about? Hey, and just ask questions, open-ended questions, like what do you think, or why do you think he's saying that, or whatever. And then you leave it there.
Yeah. Yeah, dropping those seeds. I think that's any relationship. Like, "Hey, you know what? I saw this book. I thought it was good. Maybe you should take a read," and just leave it at that.
Leave it at
The older time, you'd be like, "You need to read.
that.
I need you to do it." I'm telling you, it's crazy. It's crazy. I know that, you have a podcast called Giant Fundamentals. I like the name. The name is, pretty cool, and I know you have a co-host as well, and you all, it's a podcast. You talk about it. It's your baby.
So the Giant Fundamentals
Mhm.
is the podcast that my co-host and I, Jerry Vaval, we started off based off of the conversations we were having with one another on a daily basis.
Mhm.
So for man, I mean, since the time that I was 19 years old, he has been my go-to guy, and I have been his go-to guy. I've seen him through so many different things, and he's seen me through so many different things. And we realized that, man, other men need to hear these conversations, because the conversations that we're having is not typical conversations like barbershop talk and stuff like that that men would have, or like how a man should be. But what we do is we talk about the things that men are feeling and thinking that they will probably never express out in the open. So through the podcast, what we're doing is we're creating a safe place for men to be heard, to be seen, to be felt.
Mhm. And, I'm also gonna add that I also think it's good. Remember earlier I mentioned that we need to have conversations about men that embodies empathy, compassion, and understanding.
Yeah.
What helped me was just listening, not trying to listen to respond, because natural, Tanya, wanna respond. I got something to say,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah, yeah.
But when you really wanna listen, like, listen, not
Yeah.
to respond, but just to understand, I'm telling you, you'll learn a lot in terms of what men are going through, and so I think it's a great podcast, and I recommend for people to check it out. I know it's on Apple, Spotify, probably on all the major platforms. Jonathan, I appreciate you coming here, to talk about this. I think this is I wanted to talk about it in a healthy way. I wanted men to, because I have men who listen to the podcast, and I know that they need healthier information. Just in full transparency, some of this stuff that we connect our ears to, it's just not healthy. I don't think this is everybody's calling. I don't think this is everybody's work. And I appreciate the content you give. It's quality content. It's content that I think men can relate to and connect to, and continue to keep doing what you're doing. And also, how can people find you as well out here in these social media streets? And also tell us about your book.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram, Jono the Giant, Jono the Giant. Um, you can also always DM me there. Facebook, this is my regular name, Jonathan Gustave. Um, email too, jonothegiant@gmail.com. And my book, When Giants Get Fed Up, From Anger to Ambition. The Fed Up is an acronym: focus, education, deception, unlearn, and push. This book I wrote, it was a therapeutic thing for me because I'm talking about the experience that I had when I was a teenager and how I dropped out of high school, how I ran a car going 90 miles per hour into a home, being chased by the police, and how all of those things really opened up my eyes to show me that, man, there are things that have transpired in my life that I'm dealing with and that they're literally manifesting themselves now, and I'm about to go down a very dark path if I don't deal with those things. So I wrote it so that men who have experienced certain things in their upbringing can hear and see that, man, they're not alone, and giving them the tools on how to um, grow out of those things and get into the life that they want.
Oh, I love that. I love that. What's their acronym again?
Set up,
What does it stand for?
focus, education, deception, unlearn, and push.
Oh, I like that. Nice little framework there. Uh, um, and so, yes, I'm gonna put everything down in the show notes, social media handles where people can find your book, your website, your email, as well as your podcast information. And so, any closing remarks before we close out? Anything you would
I
like
was
to
about to
say?
say, man, I definitely appreciate you for having me on. This was a very robust conversation. Thank you for what you do, because like you've been watching my stuff. I've definitely been watching you and how you've been able to really help women, like going through divorce and breakups, so on and so forth. And I've seen how you evolve over the years. I
Thank
was
you.
like, wow, you really like this is your mission because you on it. People no, but you there. So man, yeah, kudos to you, big ups to you, and thank you so much for allowing me to be on.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Jonathan. You take care.
All right, you have a good one.
Thanks.